Hello writers, how are you? It's November. If you watched my last video, actually it wasn't the last video, it was one I did a couple weeks ago. Actually, I can't remember. Wow, is anyone else having trouble keeping track of time? Seriously, I cannot believe that we are already over halfway through November. But anyways, back in October, I made a video about Preptober for pantsers, and it was my full intention to dive into Nanowrimo. I had a project, I had plans, I did all this stuff. And then let's start with the positive. For the first couple days, it went great. I was making my word count goals and I felt really positive, and the story that I was working on was just clicking along. And then stuff happened and more stuff happened, and then I had a day where I couldn't write at all. And you know how it is. You think to yourself, oh, that's okay, I'll just make up the word count the next day. Friends, I did not make up the word count the next day, or the day after, or the day after that. So I want to today talk about what to do when you're struggling with, I guess, creative burnout is what it is. I think for some reason I was hesitant to call it burnout. I just was recognizing that I was struggling with Nanowrimo this year, but I think that's what it is. It's a little bit of burnout. So let's talk about that. Content note, there will be some discussion of depression and mental health in this video. So, okay, this isn't the first time that I've struggled with burnout. I think motivation is a really key part of my writing process. So a lot of what I do is to not chase that motivation. That sounds too, I don't know, that's not quite right. But I try to protect my motivation and nurture my motivation. That's better. I try to nurture my motivation because to me, that is the single biggest factor in getting me to write and to write well and to write healthily and productively. So what happens when that doesn't happen? First, I would say I'm coaching myself through this. And one of the things that I remind myself is that it doesn't really matter too much why I'm suffering from burnout, because the thing is that anything could be the cause, or it's a mix of causes. And right now, at least, it's not super helpful for me to focus too much on the why. And the reason is that I tend to be a very solution-oriented person. I'm a fixer. If there's a problem, I start going, how can I fix this? And burnout isn't something that you can just fix. I don't think that's a super helpful way to look at it for myself. I think also that the causes of burnout can be lots of things outside of your control. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it's irrelevant to try to figure out what those factors are. I think it's more important. Let's say it's just, I would rather prioritize building up my own process and my own flexibility and adaptability so that when burnout does happen for whatever reason, I am able to get through it and I'm able to coach my way through it, if that makes sense. So let's not focus on the why so much. It could be external factors. It could be things that you don't even realize are happening. Like, for example, for a long time, I'd get really depressed in the fall and winter. I realized, oh, it's probably because of the sunlight. Granted, I live in California. It's not that much of a problem here as much as it was when I lived in Boston, for example. But still, there is something a little bit sad when the sky starts getting dark at 4:45 p.m. for me. So there's that. And then there's also just external stuff, new projects coming in, deadlines get shifted. Maybe there's an illness, maybe there's an unexpected emergency, whatever. So let's move past the cause of burnout and let's just say, okay, so you have burnout, now what? You're not alone, first of all. And this is something that I'm telling myself, because sometimes when you're especially in a situation like doing Nanowrimo and you have so many friends and writer acquaintances who are doing it too, and people are posting their word counts and everyone's doing great and happy, and sometimes it can make you feel like, oh my God, I'm the only one who's struggling and I help. But then at the same time, you don't want to say that you're not making a word count because you don't want to be a bummer and everyone else is doing so great. And so you kind of keep it to yourself, and then we all keep it to ourselves, and then no one knows that we're not alone. So I'm here to tell you right now that trust that you're not alone. Even if other people do not chime in, I guarantee you that somebody else is feeling the same as you, because creatives do. It's a thing that happens to all creatives, I believe. The second thing that I remind myself is that just because I am feeling this way and feeling like I can't write does not mean that I am lazy, or that I'm not a real writer, or that I am somehow failing as a writer, or that I'm not doing as well as I could, right? Those are all really harmful constructions, and they're not true. You're not lazy. I'm not lazy. Feeling burnout is not a symptom of laziness. That's not what it is. And it doesn't make you any less of a real writer. It doesn't make you any less of a good writer if you feel this way sometimes. So that's really important to, I think, remind oneself when one feels this way. Still, it's one thing to know that intellectually, but it's another to have to deal with these feelings. And the feelings persist even if we tell ourselves, don't feel that, it's not true. But you might be feeling like, yeah, but this is how I feel. And I totally get that, because I'm right there with you. So now let's talk about ways to sort of protect yourself adequately so that these feelings don't overwhelm you. First, I do think it's okay to feel any of the feelings that you have. You know, we're human and we have feelings, and sometimes you just gotta feel the feelings, make yourself a cup of hot cocoa, and just kind of feel them, and like really feel them, and that's totally fine. But when you're ready to kind of distance yourself a little bit from those particular feelings and move on to other feelings, then one thing you can do is step back a little bit from the nano communities that you're in. I know that for me, I haven't logged on to the nanowrimo.org website in a while, just because I'm super happy for my friends that they're doing such a great job doing their nano and hitting their goals, but I don't necessarily need to know that every day. You know what I mean? Like that's okay. And I've also stepped back from some of the channels that deal with nano in some of my writing communities on Discord and on Slack. So if you have stuff like that too, maybe just mute those channels for a little bit. You don't necessarily need to be part of that. Let them have fun and do their thing and support each other, but you might need a different kind of support. And if you have a writing community, you could ask in some of the channels if there isn't already a channel for support or for burnout or discussing the more difficult sides of writing. Ask for that. Ask the mods for that, or maybe even in the general chat you could say, hey, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my nano goals and I kind of want to talk about it with other people. Could you let me know, and let's start something together. And then that way you don't feel alone, and you have some support, and you can talk to each other. And you can also, I think, importantly, carve out that space for yourself where there's no peer pressure, where you can just write at the pace that you want to write, or not write at all if that's what you need to do, and not feel tempted to compare yourself to other people. Because I know that for me, I do get pulled into that trap of comparing myself to other people if I'm not careful. And that is not, for me, a very healthy approach when I'm experiencing burnout. Another thing that you could do is just stop. It is perfectly legit to say, you know what, nano just isn't working for me this year, and I'm gonna stop and not do it and do something else, or not do anything related to writing for a little while. And that is totally legit, and I give you permission, and the universe gives you permission to do that. And I'm not ruling that out for myself, but just for me personally, I'm not quite ready to give up yet. And so here's what I did. If you are also feeling burnout but not quite ready to just chuck the NaNoWriMo thing altogether, then here are some tips that I'm trying right now. The first is I radically reset my word count goals for the month. as I mentioned, I started off this month really strong and I got a few days of writing a lot. I think I hit over 2,000 words a day the first couple days. And then it started to peter down, and then I had a day or two of not writing at all, and then I felt so behind, and so on. So what I did was, okay, I am going to now just try to write 500 words. And for you, it might be 100 words, it might be 250 words, whatever it is. But for me, 500 was a good goal, and it felt achievable, and it didn't feel intimidating. And so now I just say, I'm just going to try for 500 words today. And most days I actually end up writing more than that. I end up writing about 1,000 words. The second thing that I did was allow myself to work on more than one project. In classical Nano, you're supposed to work on a single story, a single novel. But for me, I found that I actually had other stuff I had to do. I had another deadline. These are all creative projects, but they weren't just the one novel. So I allowed myself to count those words towards my word count. And that actually helped me a lot. And it helped alleviate the guilt that I was feeling when I was like, oh no, I'm writing fiction, but I'm not working on my Nano project. Oh no. And I said, Jane, it's okay. You're still writing. And that's what Nano is all about, at least for me. It's about helping to capture that energy and the momentum and motivation for writing and being creative. So whatever project it is, you are allowed to count it towards Nano. And then the third thing that I implemented is sprints. I know, this isn't a new idea. Everybody loves sprints. I love sprints. I've been doing sprints for a while, but for some reason this month, and in particular like the last 2 weeks or the last week and a half, the sprints thing has become a complete mental game changer. And one reason is that I downloaded this app called Focus Keeper. I think that's what it's called, Focus Keeper. And this was recommended to me by my fellow writer and friend, Nina Niskanen. And it's great. It's a timer, but unlike just a regular timer on your iPhone, it keeps rolling through the sprints continuously, so you don't have to reset it. And also, it has a clever UI where it's one color during the work period time of the sprint, and then it switches to another color during the break period. And for me, just offloading that cognitive mental necessity of checking the timer to see how much time do I have left before it dings made a huge difference. And I think when you're suffering from burnout, when every little bit of energy counts, it's all about what can you offload out of your brain so that you can focus on writing. And for me, having Focus Keeper just keep the time, and I didn't even think about it. I didn't worry about it. I would just write till it went ding and turn blue. Then I was like, oh, break time. And then I'd have break and it'd go ding and turn pink. And then it was writing time. Now, Focus Keeper is free. There are premium features with it too that I haven't explored because I just used the free version. But the downside of the free version is that I think you can only do the classic Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes on and 5 minutes break, which isn't going to work for everybody. And in fact, some days I feel like 25 minutes is a really long time for sustained work. So the other thing that I suggest that you try, and that I've tried that's been really helpful, is experiment with different lengths of your sprints. Some days it might be just 10 minutes and that's all you got inside you. Some days it might be 15. Some days it could be as much as 30. I don't think I've ever really done a full 30-minute sprint. My max is about 25, and then I need to take a break. And then the other tip that I will say is definitely respect the breaks. Do not think, oh, I'm almost at the end of the scene, I'm just going to finish it and then eat into your break. I think the breaks are mentally and physically really important to helping you deal with burnout, or just in general in life. Get up out of your chair, stretch, get a glass of water, just focus on something else for a few minutes. I think it's hugely helpful. And the wonderful thing about sprints is that they're hyper flexible, so that you can do them continuously if you have a block of time, or you can just do a little 10-minute sprint and then that's it. And that's all you had time for today. And that's still something. And I think that it counts, and it's awesome. Okay, so those are my tips for how to handle NaNoWriMo when you're feeling a little bit burnt out. I also try to frame situations like these as learning experiences. And I know that sounds really corny and really cheesy, but for me at least, it really helps me to feel less like a failure or less depressed about it if I can say, okay, Jane, this is challenging, you're struggling, you feel like you're not doing so great, so what can you learn from this experience? And almost always you can learn something about your process and what works for you. And maybe the takeaway for me as I muse to myself is that Nano doesn't work for me. Clearly, it's not working for me great this month, so maybe Nano doesn't work for me. And just because it's worked in the past, because it has, maybe now is not the time that it works for me, and it may work again in the future, and that's okay. It's all about dialing in on the sort of specific and unique processes that are going to work for you, and those might change at various points in your life, or they might change in reaction to various circumstances in your life. And I think the key to all of this is to be able to recognize when you're feeling burnt out. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I didn't really recognize what it was at first. And it took a few days before I went, oh, I think I'm burnt out actually. So learning how to recognize that, and then learning how to adjust your process so that if you need to keep going or if you want to keep going, and sometimes it's not a choice, right? Like sometimes we have deadlines and work and money that's depending on our being able to hit a deadline. So you kind of have to find ways to work through the burnout. I can't believe I just said that. That sounds so rough, but that's the reality of capitalism, I'm sorry to say. So, but it's about being able to balance being kind to yourself and protecting yourself. And then, as I said, I like this image of like coaching myself through the burnout. The final thing that I will say, and I've said this before, and I say it a lot when I talk about creativity and how to build creativity and to build a practice around creativity, is don't forget to recharge your creative well. This is an idea that I learned first from Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, which is an interesting book. I didn't vibe with a lot of the book. Morning pages, for example, have never worked for me. And then she has this whole like higher power thing, which also, that didn't work for me. But this idea of recharging the creative well totally works for me. I fully believe in it. And I think the critical thing here is not just that you take the time to recharge and refill your well because it's been depleted because of all your creative exertions, but that you start viewing it as part of your writing work, because it is. It is part of your creative work to carve out that time to refill your creativity and to recharge your creative energy. So for me, I like sometimes to do things that are totally unrelated to writing. Like I like to play music or sew or knit. I love sort of handcrafts in general because I think it takes me to a different headspace and I find it very relaxing. But also, if I am engaging with story, I'll read books. I love reading books just for pure fun, and I try hard not to analyze them too much because I try to tell my brain, no, this is your fun recharge book. This is not meant to be like a learning experience. I watch movies, listen to music, go for a walk, stuff like that. Find out the activities that make you feel like you are recharging, and don't think too hard about what am I getting out of this? Am I really recharging? Am I learning new stuff? Just explore and have fun and try to find some relaxation. So I think that's it for me. If you are suffering from burnout, I'm sorry because it really sucks, but know that you're not alone and know that there are ways to coach yourself through it if you want to. And also it's okay to feel your feelings, and hot cocoa for me anyway, it makes everything better. And yeah, so I will see you next time. Happy writing or happy not writing.